You know that feeling when you see a huge gap between what people say they believe and what they actually do? It's frustrating, right? Well, that very tension is at the heart of one of the most intense public speeches ever recorded. Today, we're diving into a chapter where Jesus confronts this head on, giving us all a powerful warning about the dangers of hypocrisy.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Jesus is talking to this huge crowd, and his disciples are right there with him. He starts by acknowledging the religious leaders of the day, the scribes and the Pharisees. He says, hey, listen to their teaching. But then, almost in the same breath, he draws this massive line in the sand. Do not do according to their works, for they say, but do not do. Wow. Right from the get-go, the core problem is laid bare for everyone to see. And you got to understand, this isn't some quiet, private chat. This is a public warning. Jesus is essentially putting the most respected spiritual leaders on blast right in front of everybody, and he's dissecting their behavior to show this sharp, glaring contrast between their words and their actions. Now, this idea of the seat of Moses is so important to get. It was a metaphor for their legitimate authority to teach God's law. So Jesus is saying, look, what they're teaching you from the scriptures, that part's technically correct. The problem wasn't what they were teaching, it was how they were living. Their lifestyle was a total contradiction to their own lessons. I mean, what an image, right? This just perfectly captures what their hypocrisy looked like in real life. They turned faith into the set of crushing, impossible-to-carry rules that they just piled onto ordinary people. But did they help? Did they offer any support? Nope. They weren't willing to lift a single finger. They were acting like taskmasters, not like shepherds. So after laying out that core problem, Jesus starts pointing out the symptoms, the visible signs of this deep inner sickness. He's basically asking, how can you spot this hypocrisy in the wild? And it really all boiled down to one thing: status. Their entire spiritual life was a performance for an audience. It was all about being seen. They absolutely loved getting the best seats at parties, the front row seats in the synagogue, and being called by fancy titles out in public. The whole game was about getting praise from people, not approval from God. And this is where Jesus just lays out this incredible, stark contrast. You've got their way, the world's way, on one side: build yourself up, chase after recognition, demand respect. And then he shows us the true way, the kingdom way, which is the exact opposite. Humble yourself, become a servant, and look for ways to serve other people. He just completely flips the script on what it means to be great. In God's kingdom, the way up is actually down. Real greatness isn't about power or having a big name. It's found in humility and in serving others. It's a total rewiring of how we think about success. Okay, and now the whole tone of the conversation shifts, and it shifts dramatically. Jesus goes from teaching the crowd to confronting these leaders face to face. And the warnings, they turn into direct condemnations. The critique becomes this powerful prophetic judgment. He launches into a series of woes. Now, a woe isn't just an expression of sadness. In the Bible, it's a declaration of judgment, something the old prophets would use. It's serious. We're going to look at 3 of his most powerful diagnoses of their spiritual condition. The very first woe is absolutely staggering. He accuses these religious gatekeepers of, blocking the gate to heaven. He says their whole system of rules and performance was actually a barrier. Not only were they not going in themselves, but they were actively stopping other people who were genuinely trying to find their way to God. Then Jesus uses this unforgettable, almost darkly funny picture. He says they're like someone who meticulously strains a tiny little gnat, an unclean insect, out of their drink to stay pure, only to turn around and gulp down an entire camel, a much, much larger unclean animal. You see, it was all about their completely warped sense of spiritual proportion. They would obsess over tiny little details, like making sure to give 1/10 of their garden herbs. But at the same time, they were completely ignoring what Jesus calls the weightier matters of the law, the huge things, the important things, like justice, mercy, and faithfulness. This might be the most devastating metaphor of them all. Back then, tombs were painted with whitewash to make them stand out, so people wouldn't accidentally touch one and become ritually unclean. So from the outside, they looked bright, clean, and perfect. And Jesus looks at them and says, "That's you. On the outside, you look so righteous, so polished, so holy. But on the inside, where only God can see,
you're full of spiritual death and decay, hypocrisy and corruption. It's this perfect-looking exterior that's just hiding a totally rotten core. Now, after a diagnosis that intense, you might think that's the end of it. But here's the thing about Jesus. He doesn't just point out the disease, he always provides the cure. He shows them the only way to actually fix this deep internal problem. The principle here is so simple, but it's incredibly profound. Think about it. You don't clean a dirty cup by just polishing the outside, right? Of course not. You start with the inside. Jesus is saying that true, genuine righteousness is an inside-out job. You have to focus on your heart, your motives, your inner world, and then your outward actions will naturally start to become clean too. So yeah, this is a pretty heavy chapter, but it's also incredibly practical. It leaves us with the question, what does cleaning the inside of the cup actually look like for us today? Well, the text itself gives us a really clear path forward.
It all starts by looking at our own motives, by constantly asking that tough question, why am I really doing this? Am I trying to impress other people, or am I doing this for God? Then it's about making sure we're prioritizing those weightier matters. Are justice, mercy, and faith actually driving our daily lives? And finally, it means we have to actively practice humility, looking for real ways to serve other people, instead of just trying to get recognition for ourselves.
And all of this leaves us with one final, very challenging question. It's a question that cuts right through all the religious noise and forces us to look in the mirror. Is the faith that we show the world just a beautiful, clean exterior, or is it a genuine, authentic reflection of a heart that's truly being cleaned from the inside out?